begin the program. Thank you very much for being here this evening. My name is Mark Grubmeyer, and I'm part of the P80 Group Foundation, which is an integral part of this part of the program of the Club de Madrid's meeting here in Little Rock. And we're delighted you're here. We have folks from all over the world and from many different disciplines and businesses and agencies and investment groups, including all the major regional development banks around the world. So we're delighted to have everybody here. I think we have a good dinner program tonight. It's very informal. We're going to have a relaxed evening, and we're going to start with a panel of distinguished experts representing all the people who've been working on the initiative that Prince Charles originally started, that President Clinton later joined, and then basically all of the world financial agencies have joined in with. And it's a very exciting program that we think we're targeting basically $20 trillion worth of funds that have assets to invest. We believe we can develop a very good program, and even if we get a very small percentage of that committed to the program that we're advocating, that's significant. For example, we have one fund here tonight that sponsored the P80 meeting in Seoul a couple of years ago that then was a $300 billion fund. It's now a $350 billion fund. And so we're asking them only for 2% of their investment. So that first $7 billion will be a good start for the program. So anyway, what we're trying to do is, as you've read from the materials and so forth, is to take the initiative of the P80, which you're going to hear a lot about, that is to encourage the world's largest pension and sovereign wealth funds to increase their investment to address resource shortage issues such as energy, water, clean air, food, and other basic resources that will be in much demand as the world's population grows and the world's income level grows. And if we don't do something, as we heard today from Dr. Hart and other experts, we're all in big trouble. So we think money can be made while at the same time addressing these issues, and that's what this is all about. So with that, I'd like to ask Little Rock Mayor Mark Stodola to come up here and say a few words.
Thank you very much, Mark. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Little Rock. I know some of you got here maybe yesterday, and some have come in today. I'm so happy to be here on behalf of the City Board of Directors and our elected leadership to welcome you to our wonderful city. I think what you're here for over the next couple of days is so critically important. It's really something that we mayors on a national level have focused on for quite some time now. One of the very first things I did as mayor when I got sworn in 2007, I went to my first U.S. Conference of Mayors meeting and promptly signed up for the Kyoto Protocol. Myself, along with 500 mayors, have been really the vanguard about the issues of clean technology, the issues of global warming, some of the things that are critically important to our planet and to the future of civilization, frankly. And so I want to let you know that on behalf of we folks that are on the ground level day by day looking at what cities can do to improve on all of those issues is so very important. We have sustainable communities programs at the national level. And my colleague Pat Hayes, who's on this panel, along with myself, have worked very hard on that in all sorts of ways, whether it be in terms of how we run our vehicles, to how we take energy, and how we reduce our energy usage, to obviously the more sustainable things of and just the simple renewable issues such as recycling and some things that we've done on a global basis. I know that's one of the low-hanging fruit issues, but I will tell you that we implemented a program this past year, and we have 88% of our people who are participating in recycling now, which we think is at least one of the first steps in terms of education about our planet. So I want to say thank you very much for being here. I'm looking forward to the conversations that we're going to have. I think you'll find Little Rock to be very open-armed and warm and gentle to all of you. We called for the weather so far that looks like it's holding for us. And certainly, as you get a chance to experience our wonderful city, you'll know why I call Little Rock the next great American city in the South. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Mayor Stodela. Now, before we get to our distinguished panel and my colleagues, I believe we're going to show a welcome video to the city of Little Rock and the state of Arkansas.
Near the very center of America, where rivers, roads, mountains, delta, plateaus, people, and ideas come together. Long renowned for its the natural state draws millions of visitors every year. Attractions. Arkansas's progressive voters have regularly supported environmental conservation, education, community services, highways, and infrastructure for economic development. Arkansas is also known for an entrepreneurial spirit that gave birth to major global corporations, such as Walmart, Tyson Foods, Riceland Rice, Dillard's, Axiom, J.B. Hunt, Klipsch, and more, as well as countless visionary leaders of business, technology, healthcare, government, and the arts, like General Douglas MacArthur, Winthrop Rockefeller, William Fulbright, Edward Durrell Stone, Sonny Liston, Sam Walton, Don Tyson, Fred Smith, John Johnson, Maya Angelou, Johnny Cash, Al Green, Mary Steenburgen, Jack and Whit Stevens, Bill and Hillary Clinton, and many others. Little Rock has served the state as the capital of government, business, and culture since the 1800s. Originally named La Petite Roche by French explorers who used the small limestone embankment on the shore of the Arkansas River as a navigational landmark, Little Rock's metropolitan area now hosts a population of more than 700,000 people. This vibrant city nurtures a thriving business community and features a bustling downtown with numerous museums and cultural attractions, a 33-acre urban park with 14 miles of bicycle and pedestrian trails, and the exciting River Market Entertainment District, anchored by the William J. Clinton Presidential Center and Park, home to the Clinton School for Public Service, the first in the nation to offer a Master's of Public Service. The Clinton Center is one of several global nonprofit organizations based in Little Rock, along with Winrock International and Heifer International, who make it their mission to create a better world.
Our mission at Heifer is to end hunger, end poverty, and take care of the earth.
The mission of Winrock International is to work with people both in the United States and around the world to improve the economic opportunities for people, to empower people and organizations, and to build their capacity. At the same time, we are sustaining and restoring the natural assets of our planet.
Heifer International was founded by an Indiana farmer, a man called Dan West. He was a dairy farmer, and he started placing animals in the belief that a cow would do a lot better for the communities than just handing out milk. And we've taken that basic idea of offering opportunities for farmers to help themselves out of poverty through good care of livestock and agroecological practices to, I think, a very sophisticated level all over the world to end poverty, hunger, and do so in an ecological manner.
There are always questions that were asked about Little Rock in Arkansas. Why are there so many international organizations and capable organizations based in Arkansas and in Little Rock? And I always have a great answer. It's because that's where they began. The culture and the people are tied directly to the Arkansas traveler reputation of Arkansans and their interest in the world.
We're a global organization. And Little Rock, given the culture here, provides us an excellent platform with which to be global. Fundamentally, the technologies that are growing very rapidly and are being implemented across the whole of Arkansas, whether it be at Walmart or Windrock or the Clinton Foundation or us, allows us to be global, allows us to function globally, and yet be very effective on a hyper-local basis. That is the advantage of being in Little Rock and its global culture that we all enjoy.
Arkansas literally helps feed the world through our agricultural powerhouses, and also leads in other fields of green technologies and manufacturing that can make the world a better place. The Earth's growing population requires adequate resources of energy, water, food, and clean, breathable air. The state of Arkansas and the city of Little Rock are proud to welcome the Club de Madrid as you gather to share ideas, develop partnerships, and create strategic alliances for worldwide sustainable growth, starting here in the natural state.
Well, I hope that helped give you an orientation as to where you are. And again, we're glad you're here. This is a working dinner, so feel free to eat and enjoy yourselves while you're listening to the panel and other speakers. What we're going to do is we're going to have this panel, and then we'll have a kind of a time where you can have a conversation with your people at your table, and then we're going to do kind of a Q&A and follow up where everybody gets to participate tonight. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Mayor Patrick Henry Hayes. Mayor Hayes is mayor of one of our twin cities here in Little Rock. You just heard from Mayor Stodola, and Mayor Hayes is mayor of North Little Rock, which is a sizable city on the other side of the river. But more importantly, perhaps for the world, he is also a very important member of an organization called ICLEI, I-C-L-E-I, which is 1,200 sustainable cities around the world who are identifying projects, investment opportunities, and technologies that can make cities more sustainable. And as we talk today, we can always talk about big picture things and complicated scenarios, but if you can capture initially projects in cities where mayors like Mayor Stodola and Mayor Hayes have the power to help implement certain new programs, things can happen much more quickly than they can even at the state or provincial level, or certainly at the national level or international level for that matter. So with this, I will turn the program over to Mayor Patrick Henry Hayes. Thank you.
Mark, thank you. And Mark Stodola, I want to tell you how much I appreciate always being in South North Little Rock. It's always a good opportunity to spend a little time in your city, and you're always welcome north of the river. And since you welcomed those of our guests from for Little Rock, let me not only take into consideration North Little Rock, but add the state of Arkansas. We're a little less than 3 million people, and you know, like Bill Clinton always says, if you don't know somebody that knows somebody, you're not an Arkansan. So we are small, but we like each other and we enjoy working together, and certainly the Central Arkansas community is energized and energetic. Let me just briefly, before I give some of those who are not here a little bit more of my bio, frame the panel. We have to my left, Aled Jones, who is with the P80 Group. He helped start that, but now he's with the P80 Group Foundation, P80 Group Foundation. So he took P8 to P80, and we'll talk a little bit about that transition as well as where we are now. And then I'll look over to Eugene Yoon. Eugene is going to take the P80 and go forward a little bit. And then we look to my left, Sam Tumiwa is going to discuss a little bit of the Asian Development Bank. And then we're going to have the cleanup hitter is Reyes Almond, who will talk a little bit about the International Finance Corporation. And hopefully we'll share a few ideas, and y'all will enjoy a couple of the things that we have to share with you. And I introduced myself a little earlier today to the group that was in the discussions we had not only yesterday but the day before. As like Mark had indicated, I have a chance to serve as chairman of the board of ICLEI USA, and have gotten very involved on national and international basis in being the voice of local government as we try to do with ICLEI in front of the UN and in front of activities, as it relates to the World Urban Forum and Rio+20 and some of these names that some of you may know and some of you may not. But I've had the honor of being a part of the U.S. delegation to do that, and most of that was entreed by my work through ICLEI. The U.S. Conference of Mayors, one of the trustees of that organization, on the Energy Environment Committee of the National League of Cities. But I tell you, the title that I probably enjoy most and think is the most important, and that is the grandfather of Isabella and Savannah and Harper, who is 4. I am concerned about them because it's personal now that I can see my grandson who's 4, and if he lives another 88 years, then while I worried about Y2K, he may very well see the 21st century. And that is a long time away. I won't be here, but our grandchildren may very well be. And when I know that when I took office 24 years ago, 2 years before that in 1987, we had 5 billion people on the globe. And last November, about this time, a little earlier, we hit 7 billion people. On the way to 9 billion, the middle to a little bit latter part of the second half of the century. We net 200,000 people a day that are added to the spaceship that we live in together. And more, we're a part of a unified globe. When I look around and see the kind of needs that people have and know that the scale tipped to over 50% of us living in urban areas on the globe about 2 years ago, and 82% of us in the United States live in urban areas, and to look at a little bit of our population, we have roughly 3 out of every 4 urban Americans live in cities 208,000 or less. We've got a lot of challenges, and I'll just end my comments because we're going to try to keep them brief so that we can go around not only our comments, but maybe have a little bit of an interchange like Mark said. My 24 years were not always on the non-challenge side. We had we went from spending power, we were by and large a purchase power city, and we went about 6-7 years ago from spending $37 a megawatt hour for our power that we bought and then sold retail to over $80 a megawatt hour overnight from one contract to the other. And I had to consider raising rates 51% on my citizens just to cover that cost. Now, we were able to keep it to 39%, but that's still a pretty big bite. And I was reelected once since we did that. The concern that I had both for the economics as well as the livability of our community was very sincere. And we became extremely aggressive in trying to reduce our consumption of energy conservation. And just to give you an idea of how successful we were, and then I'm going to turn it over to Aled, I put 39% additional revenue in the budgets of the different departments that I had. And then we started turning off the computers, and we started, making sure that we didn't have our air conditioning systems on over the weekends. And one thing led to another, and at the end of the year, we returned over $400,000 to the city's general fund. Now, can we find a way to use that savings to do even more? That's a big part of what we talked about today and yesterday. So with that, let me thank again all of you for being here. On behalf of all of those of us that are Arkies, we're glad that those are here, and we want you to enjoy yourselves. And now let me turn it over to Aled Jones of the P80 Group Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Hayes. And hopefully you're enjoying your dinner, and we won't keep you too long before the next course comes along. So I had the privilege of helping set up the P80 Group and the P80 Group back in 2007 under the auspices of His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales. And the Prince of Wales wanted to send his warm wishes and hopes for this meeting, and hope that we can come up with a very useful collaboration going forward. So he wanted to pass on his wishes to everyone in the room. Just a brief history and a sort of why are we here, and why is this an important issue. And I'm not going to try and summarize all the discussions that we've been having with the P80 Group Foundation and the various people we've been able to bring together in Little Rock over the last couple of days here, but I'm sure you'll hear a lot more in your discussions around the tables and over the next couple of days. But basically, we set up the P8 Group in 2007 to bring together, and it says it in the title, 8 of the world's largest public pension funds. Over 4 years, we ended up with 12 of the world's largest public pension funds gathering together at least once a year. We had 5 summits, and collectively they held $3 trillion of capital. And what we were trying to understand is why that $3 trillion of capital wasn't being used for climate investing at any scale that we were discussing in the United Nations Forum, or within government forums, or within the public sector. And now being a full-time academic and doing the P80 and trying to save the planet on the sort of hobby, we weren't really talking about moving the scale of finance that was needed. Over the period of those 5 summits and over the 4 years where the P8 met, hosted both by the Prince of Wales in the Palace in London, by the World Bank and the International Finance Corporation in Washington, as well as by the US Embassy in Brussels. And I'm sure Eugene will talk a little bit more about trying to expand that into the P80 group that was hosted by the National Pension Service in Korea. We managed to make an additional investment of around $500 million. So not an insubstantial amount of investment, but not really on a scale of the $3 trillion that was collectively managed. Majority of that investment was in bonds, and $300 million of that was in World Bank green bonds. So it was slow and steady progress. However, the discussions we've been having, certainly today, is talking about the economic transformation that's starting to happen around green, the economic transformation that's needed in terms of response both to resource limits as well as climate change. And so how do we be smart and strategic in enabling this transformation to actually secure the jobs that we currently have, as well as potentially create new jobs, but ensure that future economic stability that we've come to enjoy, that is now potentially at risk over the next decade, potentially sooner than that, but certainly over the next, well, between now and the end of, middle of the century. So we need to try and understand why the investments aren't flowing, what the political responses are needed, and what the pension fund responses are needed to be able to get to the scale that we're talking about. So the system isn't structured to make this a natural thing that happens. So how do we ensure and help the system to become something that enables this solution and the set of solutions to happen? There's lots of capital, $3 trillion in the 12 representatives within the P8 group, and then expanding into the P80, several more $1 trillion coming on board there. So we're able to bring 12 people into one room that could say something about how $3 trillion was mobilized. There's an awful lot of projects, and the solutions are out there that can solve the problems of climate change and resource depletion, but they're not being matched together. There's this problem of mismatched scale. The $3 trillion want to make investments of $1 billion type projects, making investments of about $100 million at a time. So those sorts of scales are actually something which is very positive. The money is there, the capital is there. The projects that are looking for that money are at the $5 million, $10 million scale. So how do we work together to aggregate them up? How do we work together with policymakers to make sure there's several more of these $5 million, $10 million projects out there so that they do aggregate up? And that's what we've been trying to do with the P8, bring together the pension funds with the political decision makers, with the multilateral development banks, with the people that can create these projects at scale and create that finance. There is a long-term problem of inertia and a long-term problem of underlying economic policy. But what we're trying to do with the P8 and the P80 Group Foundation is really to try and set some of these projects up that demonstrate what is possible, so that when we go to the political decision makers when we go to the pension funds and ask them to commit more effort into creating the right policy environment and more effort into making those investments, we can say it is possible. This is what we've already done. Here we can demonstrate what has been possible, feasible. Here are some of the solutions. Here's the profit you can make in doing this. And we'll hear a little bit more about some of the concepts of new financing vehicles that are possible if only we can get the right people together. So in the short term, we want to demonstrate this is possible. We're here in this room to try and work together collaboratively to create those projects, to create the right sort of structures, policy structures, the right partnerships that demonstrate those projects are possible, to bring the pension funds and the policymakers together, but also the intermediaries, the project developers, the energy service companies, the cities, the leaders of those cities that have the need for the capital, that have the projects that can aggregate up. So what we really want to try and do is focus on how we de-risk this as an initiative, how we create the right opportunities that then create the track record that pension funds need to be able to invest. So one of the key issues we've got with pension funds is they need 20 years of track record before they'll invest in anyone. We're creating a new economic transformation that's got 1-2 years of best practice. So how do we create those partnerships that de-risk that and create the track record, which will then allow them to invest a lot more money in a short time frame? How do we create the public-private partnerships, the short-term incentives, and this experience? And that's what we've been trying to do with the P8, and that's how we've got to this stage, where convening a small group of people under the auspices of the Prince of Wales goes so far, but we need to take it to the next level. So I'll hand over to Eugene, who can take us to the next level.
I'm not so sure about that, but thank you very much, Alex, for that summary of how we got here. Let me tell you a little bit about myself and how I got to the P8 or P80. The National Pension Service of Korea asked me to represent them at the P8 meetings, and I was very happy to go and meet Prince Charles and have some dinner with him. Okay? It worked out nicely, and in one of the meetings, Prince Charles said, you know, this is a nice meeting, there's 12 representatives, aren't there more pension funds out there? And someone said no, and I said yes, and he said, can't we make this pension 800? And everyone fell off their chairs and said, no, please stop there. And, you know, my friends at ADB said, we could try to do P80. And we thought about it, and Prince Charles liked it very much and said, let's go for P80. And said, next meeting should be in Asia. And so we contacted MPS and said, let's have it in Korea. And so in 2010, we had our Asian summit, and we called that the P80. We weren't 80 then. Our aspiration was to go up to 80. And we continue to have these aspirations to go to 800 to please the Prince. Okay. What we found out when we brought 12 people into the room first was that it was a mess. Okay, the pension funds are not used to working together, and it seemed like we needed to do something to change things. But let me share this with you. It took us 5 years to realize that something wasn't right. Okay, looking ahead, I want to give you a vision of what we want to do. But remember, our aim is to try and mobilize large amounts of capital into the climate space. Okay? But how do we do that? So we thought it would be a good idea to have a change of approach, and first of all, to analyze what's going on. Imagine a room like this with not so many people, but 12 large pension funds, and the Chinese Sovereign Wealth Fund says, it's a dinner party, okay? Let's use chopsticks only, okay? The Korean side in pension fund says, we have to dine and sing at the same time, okay? The Norwegians say, sorry, only salmon, okay? And the Singaporeans, well, they have a recommendation for everyone, but nothing for themselves, okay? And the British, well, that was great, okay? They wanted no food, only talking, okay? So this was a kind of when we asked everyone what they wanted to do, this was a kind of very difficult situation we had to manage. So clearly we needed to change. So we said, I think the cart was in front of the horse before. So we said, let's re-engineer. And instead of putting the focus on the people with the money, we said, let's put the focus on the vehicles in which the people with the money can put money into. So this is one of the reasons why we approached ex-Prime Minister Wim Kok and Maria Elena and Club de Madrid were very gracious and said, look, if you need support to move this large amount of capital, we're very happy to work with you. And we reached out to other people, and we soon realized that it was possible to bring a group of people, and we call that new group the P80 Group Foundation, that were going to go out and build these vehicles, design these vehicles. So now we have a hub and spoke kind of model where the support group is actually in the middle, and we will talk separately to all the pension funds, whether it's going to be 8 or 80 or even 800. So we need you to help us to reach out, find out what these pension funds would like to do, and then in turn help us build, first of all, design and build these vehicles that will make the investments possible. This work is very important because, as you know, pretty soon, we hope, the GCF fund is going to be made available. We hope money will flow into it. In Korea, we think it'll be $100 billion a year. Okay, I was told by Wim Kok, don't expect that much yet. Okay, but even if that money comes in, if we don't know how to make investments, that money is not going to go anywhere. Okay? So the work that we do here will lay the infrastructure to make those investments possible. We're laying down the pipeline, and what we want to do today is to highlight some of the pipelines that are already being built. The first one is with ADB, and we call that the CP3 fund, which you will hear about. And the second one is with IFC, and there will be others that we want to build, and we need your support for that. Thank you.
Sam?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much for having the Asian Development Bank here in Little Rock. Let me maybe share with you how we're looking at this at the Asian Development Bank and from an Asian point of view, where we're calling this Asia's Climate Change Imperative. We did a study this year we called Asia 2050, the Asian Century. And according to the study, if Asia continues to grow at its current rate of growth, by 2050, per capita income in Asia will be $47,000 a year, which is the same as Europe's per capita income today. This is going to be huge amounts of growth. Now, just a few other factoids. With this, at the same time, there's been incredible urbanization in Asia. We've all talked about that, but just a few numbers. We also did a study earlier this year that talked about urbanization, and we looked at urbanization rates that brought regions of the world from 10% urbanization to 50% urbanization. It took Europe about 150 years from 10% urbanization to 50% urbanization. It took Latin America about 120 years. It took the US about 100 years. It's taken Asia an average of 50 to 60 years. Even an interesting country, Bhutan, that I used to work in a lot, became 50% urbanized in less than 60 years. So urbanization is taking place very, very quickly in Asia. Another little factoid perhaps that helps frame the question, vehicle ownership in the developing world. Vehicle ownership in the developing world is about 30 to 40 cars or vehicles per 1,000 people. Vehicle ownership in the industrialized world is 600 to 800 vehicles per 1,000 people. So if we put all this together, the Asians are going to get richer. There's massive urbanization. They're all going to buy cars pretty soon, and they should be allowed to if they want to. What's going to happen to Asia? Another number that keeps us up at night is, according to the International Energy Agency, currently greenhouse gas emissions, 2006, 2008, greenhouse gas emissions that are coming from Asia is about 30% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. By 2030, they will be up at 48%. Almost half of the global greenhouse gas emissions is going to come from Asia. So really, in our region, for the Asian Development Bank, working on climate change is something that we have to do and that we have to succeed in. The investments that are going to be made in Asia have very long lock-in periods, anywhere, have very long lock-in periods. So as development happens, as urbanization happens in Asia, these choices have to be made. Are we going to look at fossil fuels for our energy and the insatiable appetite for Asia for fossil fuels, or are we going to do energy efficiency and renewable energy? With transportation, is it going to be about building more and more roads, or is it going to be about public transportation and more efficient ways of moving goods and services? We have to make those choices today. So in ADB, these are the issues that are foremost in our minds. So what we like to say, and maybe it's a rallying cry for ourselves and the institution and the people around us, is the fight for climate change will be won or lost in Asia. So we have a very important role to play, we think. And so how does ADB do this? We are a $12 to $15 billion a year lending organization. So it's minuscule. Our estimates say between 2010 and 2020, the investment needs in Asia, infrastructure investment needs in Asia, are at about $8 trillion, give or take a few $1 trillion. So we're a drop in the bucket. We're irrelevant if we're at $10 to $15 billion a year. So we really have to be working with the private sector. We really have to be working on public-private partnerships. Our view is that investments on clean energy and climate change is simply just trickling into Asia. Funds and private investors, they look at the risks around the world, and money will flow where there's least risk for the best return. And for a while there, it was in Europe and the feed-in tariffs. North America had very good feed-in tariffs, so the money was not coming into Asia. And a colleague of mine said, what can we do to open the floodgates of climate change financing to Asia? And the same colleague somehow finagled his way into the P8 meetings. He wasn't invited, I don't think, but he found his way in there. And when it was asked, what are we going to do? What vehicles are we going to do? I think he put his hand up and said, the Asian Development Bank will develop something. So he came back to the office and said, okay, Sam, we're going to be doing this and that. I need some money. I'm like, really? What are we going to be doing? So we quickly designed a fund of funds. We had no experience doing this. We quickly designed it. We put it up against the P8 investors and said, no, we don't want this. This is not what we want. So I think, we were participating also in the P80, and we used the P80 meeting in Seoul, Korea as a way to brainstorm on what these financing instruments should look like. And Eugene, you make it sound it was very good. But, he called me up, Sam, we need people to come to the P80, and I had to make cold calls to these pension funds, and I cold called these sovereign wealth funds in Asia who I didn't know any of them, and I just looked up the internet and who are these people and called them. I called low-ranking people, I called high-ranking people, then I had to buy them airline tickets so they come to the conference. It was a lot of work. But we got a lot out of it in the P80. And I think we were able to design. Along the way, we brought along some friends. We invited the IFC to come along because of their expertise and their experience. UK's DFID, Department of Foreign
International Development.
Yes, Department for International Development came along to also help in the process. And we designed what Eugene called the Climate Public-Private Partnership. And I wish I could talk a little bit more about it, but my understanding is that the SEC regulations, since we're going into fundraising pretty soon, I can't talk about that in detail. But I will talk about two funds that we designed based on the lessons learned from the P80 conference that happened. We designed what we call the ASEAN Infrastructure Fund. There's a lot of wealth in the Asian countries, but it's all being invested in North America. It's being invested in Europe. Very little of Asia's wealth is being invested in Asia. And that's why NPL has an office in New York. But one of the things that we did was we got with the countries in ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Countries, and we set up a fund where the governments of those countries put in equity into this fund. We also put equity in this fund. With this equity, we are now investing in public-private partnership infrastructure projects, from toll roads to municipal waste to things like that, that in the past didn't happen in Asia. Our idea is to operate this fund, get it after 2 or 3 years of operations. Like Alan said, we can't wait for 10 years or 20 years of operations. After 2 or 3 years of operations, we would like to get this fund rated. and we would like to get this rated as a AAA fund or a AA fund. And if it gets rated at that level, then we can begin to get pension funds and sovereign wealth funds to invest in the ASEAN Infrastructure Fund. In fact, that fund we've closed. It's operational. We have a Macquarie Bank as the fund manager, and we're looking for investments in infrastructure in Asia. We did as a spin-off for that. We did another project at the country level where we worked with a Philippine pension fund called Pinay with the exact same model. They put money into the equity. We put money into the equity. We're looking for infrastructure, public-private partnership infrastructure projects in the Philippines that ADB would co-finance with the Pinay fund. So there's a lot of lessons that we've learned, and this is the importance of the P80. I think the vehicles that Eugene talks about, and bringing together the minds that are doing this, and having the endorsement of the Club de Madrid and the connections that the members of the Club de Madrid have to the pension funds and the sovereign wealth funds and pockets of wealth, I think are something that's much needed for, at least in my case, in Asia, and the climate change imperative that we need to address in the region. Thank you. And I'll pass it on to Reyes for his.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you to the two mayors. Thank you for your welcome. It's wonderful to be here. I travel to many exotic places, but it's the first time I've been here, and I'm delighted. Am I right that I'm standing between them and their dinner? Is that right?
They're sort of moving in that direction,
Yeah,
but I think they may want to take a bite, and they're certainly welcome to. But
I will try and be brief. So I'm with the International Finance Corporation's asset management company, and I thought it might be useful to spend a few seconds talking about what the IFC is and where we're coming from, and then to talk about the work that I'm doing on a daily basis, because I think it is germane to this conversation. So the IFC is a global development organization. Our shareholders are 185 countries, any country just like you can imagine. We work exclusively in the private sector, and we've been doing this for 56 years. Every year of our existence, we've been profitable. Profits are not returned to the shareholders; they're reinvested in the business. We have currently about 100 offices in over 90 countries, so deep penetration in the emerging markets, about 4,000 staff, more than half of whom are based in the countries in which we operate. In 2009, the IFC set up a wholly owned subsidiary called the IFC Asset Management Company, which is the entity that I work for after a long career in IFC. And the Asset Management Company is set up with the specific purpose of working with institutional investors to enable them to co-invest with IFC. IFC, through its long history, has achieved an outstanding track record of investment. So to give you a sense, excuse me, we do $4 to $5 billion of equity a year, all in emerging market companies and financial intermediaries. And over 10 years, our return is over 24%. Over 20 years, approximately the same. Over 50 years, around 15% IRR. Excuse me. So it's a very strong equity track record. If you look at the part of our business which is investing in private equity funds, the last 10 years, the internal rate of return is over 22%, which is better than many of the benchmarks. So we've done very well through an approach which we've honed and learned over the years. And essentially, the asset management company enables institutional investors to partake of that. So the projects that we can invest in through the funds that we manage are all filtered through the IFC system. So they meet all of the criteria that IFC requires, basic sponsor checks, but also very strong focus on environmental, social, and governance issues, very thorough due diligence, et cetera, et cetera. And the investors then get to co-invest in that in a framework that makes sense for investors, independent decision-making, appropriate governance structures, independence at every level, to make sure that the interests of the investors are being looked at. Now, the work that I'm focused on, I'm responsible for our climate work in the asset management company. And what that boils down to today is developing and implementing a new fund, which is the IFC Capsis Fund, which I'm not going to be able to give you a lot of detail on because we are in the market with this fund right now. In fact, I hope that we're on track to achieve a first close by the end of this year or early next year. So that's a big event, and a huge amount of work has gone into that. But I thought what might be useful is just to reflect a little bit and give a couple of points on some of the interactions that we've had with investors in this process. Maybe that would be useful in this environment. I think one key aspect that one needs to think about in talking to investors about the climate space is that they come from somewhere different, and they are looking at things in a different way. I mean, I know that a number of people here have experience of this, but just to emphasize the point, I think to be successful in persuading people to invest in this space, you need to look at the world from their standpoint. And I think maybe that's the basic point of any kind of marketing. You need to look at it from their standpoint. From their standpoint, there are many other things that they can invest in, frankly. Many other things, some of which look more attractive on the moment, some of which look less risky on the moment. So one aspect of what we try to do is to talk to them about the reality of risks as opposed to the perception of risks. It's, I think, a key element of this. So we utilize the fact that we have great experience in working in emerging markets, and that experience translates not just in the fact that we're a reasonably substantial organization with people and resources all over the world, but most importantly for these investors in the track record. And the first question that they ask is, how do you achieve this track record? And what is the approach that you have? Because they are, if they've invested in emerging markets, they may or may not have been successful. They're worried about it. And very often, some of the investors we talk to have not invested because they're too worried about the risks. They're worried about who they're going to do business with and how do you identify the right people to do business with. Very basic things of that type. They're worried about legal systems, how do you enforce contracts, very basic things of that time. So we talk to them about our experience of investing, and including the fact that, to be very honest, because we're an organization that invests in the private sector and with the private sector, we've lost money on occasion. So we have a fantastic record overall, I would say, but we've also lost money. We lost money, in Argentina, most of that in 2001, but most of that we recovered after. We lost money, in the Asian crisis, but we made, good investments at that time as well, and recovered quite a bit of money. So, what have we learned from all of that is something that we try and package and provide to investors. So, I think a first point is a thinking about the mindset and the approach to emerging markets globally, even before you begin to talk about the group of sectors that we're talking about. Secondly, with respect to this particular group of industries that we're talking about, the most important thing that you need to be able to demonstrate is that there is the ability to make investments for profit, to actually make profit out of this. And whatever elements of track record are out there, which are not that many, we try to bring together and talk to investors about them. An interesting point within this issue about track record, I think it came up in the panel discussion earlier, is that it's true that institutional investors, particularly in Europe and the United States, are accustomed to looking at investment managers from the standpoint of their track record. So they will look at both the institutional track record and the individual track record of the individuals that are managing their money, and try and relate what they've done to the success or failure that they have achieved, and try and make a decision based on that. IFC doesn't have that luxury. When we invest, we're often investing in a nascent space, and I would say that this is to some extent a nascent space that we're talking about. So the people that we invest with often don't have such a long track record. The private equity funds that we've invested with have quite limited track record, and more than 50% of them would be characterized by institutional investors as being first-time funds. It turns out that those funds have actually done better than the average in our portfolio. So we have 124 private equity funds, and more than half are first-time funds. they have a better average return than the funds overall and the portfolio overall. So, and again, the question comes: how do you actually do that? How do you identify these people? Well, the answer is more time. It will take more time than I have time for now. But essentially, you have to look much more deeply in the diligence. You have to look much deeper than just trying to look at the historical track record of these individuals. You have to understand the market in which they're investing in, the strategy that the fund manager is putting forward, and relate the two, the skills of the fund manager with the strategy of with the environment that they're investing in, and what is happening in the industries that they're investing in. It sounds obvious, and I suppose it is, but it is a critical thing to do. So these are some of the elements that we try to bring to the investors that we're talking to try and get them comfortable with the risk and opportunity in emerging markets, and also with the space that they're investing in. And then I guess the final thing is that we offer them through the asset management a partnership with the IFC, which is a well-known and successful organization in these markets. So a partnership with an organization that has clout in these markets and is able to help to mitigate some of the risks that they see, which are broader risks, and do that. Now, just briefly on the dinner is starting here, on the P80 and the Club de Madrid. I want to say that the reason I'm here this evening is because I think this is a tremendous initiative. One of the experiences that I had, personally, in attending some of these meetings is, first of all, a very interesting and useful interaction. But it always seemed to me that 8 or 12 was too small a number, because there are many, many investors out there, and you need, for these projects and structures to work, you need to have the ability to open up to a broader range of investors, a broader range of risk and return appetite, ability to do that. And I think that is one of the things that this offers. And then I think the partnership with the Club de Madrid offers the ability to engage interlocutors which are going to be unparalleled, I think, in making the arguments that we need to make in order to persuade the investors to please consider this. So let me stop there.
Let me just end this session. Each of us had agreed before that we were going to keep our remarks to 3 minutes, and I'm happy to say none of us did that. We were going to interchange a bit after our proper remarks, but the exciting thing is the opportunity to have the talent that we have, both from the Club de Madrid as well as from the P80 in Little Rock at this time. Little did I think 24 years ago when I arrived at City Hall in North Little Rock that I would be ending my term post 24 years thereafter. But the challenges are unique. The opportunities are tremendous. One of the things that I say as I end it, and then ask for folks to help join with me in thanking our panel, is that the one question I could almost summarize my job as mayor, and it's interesting because in the international field, we're known as NGOs, which stands for non-governmental organization, which is really something that we are working hard to try to change. But if anything, the future is in the urban environment. The excitement's there, the challenges are there, and the opportunities are there. But we have to have new models, we have to have new financial vehicles, and because, if I could end it with one sentence describing my job over the last 24 years, it's, Mayor, how do we pay for it? Literally. And this is offering new tools, better tools, more partnerships from the public and the private sector, more the private sector, and how we as local officials are going to answer that. So join me now in thanking this panel for their participation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for doing this. And usually when I have to talk to these guys, I have to go to London or Washington or Philippines or someplace, and they're all here, so it makes it a lot easier for my life. So thank you.
Let me just add one thing, though, real quickly. Jerry Jones helped facilitate this. There are a lot of other folks that was the entree for the Club of Madrid being here. Mark Grubmeyer with the P80. I think these two individuals ought to receive our thanks for being a part of today.
Thank you. But thank you. but some groups that should receive our thanks more than me are the 50 for the Future, which is paying for our dinner tonight, and the Greater Little Rock Chamber of Commerce that has made a lot of this logistics possible. So thank the 50 for the Future and the Greater Little Rock Chamber. Thank you very much. So you guys probably need to eat some dinner. We're way ahead of you. So we're not going to talk for a little bit, and then we will talk for a little bit, but it'll be more interactive with you. But as we move into the next stage, I would like to read a couple of sentences that some of the people earlier today heard this, that former President Clinton focused on these issues that we're talking about today. I'll read a little summary that he wrote to an earlier P80 summit. He said, as participants in this summit, you are empowered to make a major difference in the future of our planet. Your investments can encourage sustainable economic growth, strengthen global stability, and improve world health and food supplies. As you explore ways to increase your climate beneficial investments, remember that in addition to addressing critical global climate issues, these funds represent a potential for profit as well. Potential for profit. Clean technologies have already been developed, which can create opportunities for growth and tackle climate change. However, many companies lack the access to capital needed to implement their strategies. Developing public-private partnerships that identify market-based approaches to accelerate the deployment of clean technologies is central to the work of my foundation's Clinton Climate Initiative, as well as the Clinton Global Initiative. It is great to see the members of the P80 embracing this opportunity as well. And I'm going to close this segment with just one example that we talked about a lot today, because a lot of people have trouble visualizing how you can make money and do this at the same time. And one of the things we focused on related to cities. Every city in the world has enormous electric bills related to streetlights. And not only that, the electricity generated to run those street lights creates a lot of emissions. There is technology completely proven and already deployed in cities like North Little Rock. LED lights that last 10 years that require about 80% less electricity to run them. And it also reduces dramatically the maintenance of replacing those lights, which means you don't have traffic jams, idling vehicles, waiting to get around trucks that are fixing the lights. Now, if there is a source of funding that can finance private sector companies that will go to cities around the world, and the half of the savings that the investor would get would provide unbelievable financial returns to the pension funds or other investors. So that in a nutshell is what we're trying to do. We're trying to create vast sums of money that can be used for those kind of projects in completely win-win situations. So with that, enjoy your main course. The wine has been so good tonight that I have one more thank you that I completely forgot. Pierre Ferrari, the CEO of our host building, Heifer International. Pierre, are you out there somewhere? Thank you, Pierre. And Pierre wears two hats. Not only is he CEO of Heifer International, which is our host, and you're going to learn a lot more wonderful things about Heifer. We talked about a lot today. But he's also on the board of directors of CEF, which Mildred Cayer talked about today, that's doing so much wonderful things with their 30-odd investment funds around the world. So, Pierre, we applaud you for all you're doing. Thank you. Thank you. meetings, I've had 3 bites of salmon. It was excellent. So we're going to move ahead. And we're going to finish early because everybody's tired. People have come from all over the world. And I'd like for my colleague to come forth. Maria Elena Aguero, please come up. Deputy Secretary General of the Club de Madrid.
Thank you. Well, thank you all very much for being here. And we thought that this was a very, very important and interesting complement to not only the conference and our annual meeting, but also a very important initiative in which to, or and through which to continue work that we have been doing over the past 5 or 6 years on climate change and obviously on sustainable development, and to bring our members together with the P80, with the work that has been done by the Prince of Wales P80 Group and Climate Initiative and other groups of related to that the Prince of Wales has sponsored and fostered. And in this next phase of climate change, we know that climate financing is one of the hurdles that has been identified as a result of the climate negotiations. And President Mary Robinson, who's just come from Doha, or has just been there, can tell us a little bit about what happened there and give us her first-hand impression of what happened there. But we'd like to set off the discussion and the question and answer period. And I must confess that we've prepped this a little bit. So I'm going to ask President Lagos, who led our climate Global Leaders for Climate Action initiative from the Club of Madrid, which between 2007 and 2011, we organized together with the United Nations Foundation regarding climate negotiations and trying to foster an efficient, effective, and equitable climate agreement and climate regime. And President Lagos from the Club of Madrid led that initiative together with Tim Worth from UN Foundation. And I will give the floor to President Lagos so we can get this discussion rolling.
Well, now I discovered that Milton Friedman is correct, you know. There is nothing like a free lunch. No, I said that I discovered that Milton Friedman is correct. There is no free lunch, after what Maria Elena told me. But in the table where I was sitting, I put 2 questions. How are you going to make the definitions where to invest from the point of view of the pension funds? And I said, look, I came from a country that about 40% of the total export trade on copper is produced in Chile. And some firms, like Walmart, among others, are asking to the Chilean firms that during the next years, they are going to produce the footprint per ton of copper of the carbon emission of that ton of copper. Therefore, that means that in the future, we are not going to have a copper price that you can read in the paper. Copper is going to be a different kind of commodity depending the amount of carbon emission. And therefore, the way to produce copper is going to be extremely important. If this is going to be the world of the future, then how are you going to make your bet? Are you going to make your bet because I think that this company is going to make such an investment that is going to reduce carbon emission and therefore is going to increase the price of copper that you're producing? And I think that this is going to be the real world in the future. Because I'm convinced that in today's world, or let us say the 20th century world, countries were classified according to the per capita income. And we used to be rather proud, you see, how good we are doing. We are increasing our per capita income. But in this century, in the 21st, the second question will be, and please, can you tell me, what is your per capita carbon emission to produce that per capita income? And needless to say, there is quite differences in today's world. In the United States, it's about 22 tons per person. In Europe, between 10 to 12. Oh, by the way, in California, it's only 10. So politics has something to do with that, you know. Why California is 10 and the average in the US is 22? Now, the problem is, if we're going to talk about the future, that in 2050, we are supposed to be, during those days, about 9 billion people in this planet. And then, if the scientists are correct, we are not supposed to be able to emit more than 2 tons per person. Let me tell you that in today's world, Latin America is about 5 to 6, Russia is about 8, and the Chinese is only 5 for the time being, but going up very rapidly. So that's the big challenge. And if that is the case, then those that are able to perceive that this is going to be the challenge and to reduce carbon emissions, that is the good thing to bet from the point of view of the pension funds. And that is why I think it's so important, this idea that you are trying to think about. Because now I'm going to be talking as a former envoy of United Nations, of the Secretary General, that we didn't succeed really in the negotiations in Kyoto. And if politicians and leaders of the world are unable to agree on that, because I will not do anything unless you do something, and the other side will say, I will not do anything because you are going up, etc., etc. But if that is the case, I think that is going to be probably the market forces. Because if it is true that in a car you need 40, about 88 or 90 pounds of copper per car, then it's important to see how much emissions that car has already in the process of being built. And therefore the question, I think, is going to be, how are we going to be able to use the private sector and market forces in order to induce consumers? What kind of future are we going to have with regard to this particular issue? And this is why I thought that was so important to have something, how we're going to be able to have a cleaner energy, or what kind of technology are we going to use in order to reduce emissions, and how are we going to be able to transform that in good business and good profits. Because after all, if you are talking about pension funds, you are betting with not your own money, but somebody else's money. And therefore, you better are correct in what your decisions are going to be. Thank you.
You're welcome. Great. I don't know if they're okay. Other questions from the floor to either our panelists or to President Lagos or to any of the other participants? Okay. If you can, yes.
Okay.
From this, okay.
Good evening. My name is Jerzy Buzek. I'm hopefully a future member of Club de Madrid. Depends on your decision tomorrow. So it's an electoral campaign for myself, as a matter of fact. Well, I've got two questions, if I may. Well, it's a proposal of using pension funds or public-private partnership. It's, of course, very interesting, probably very fruitful. But my question is not only where from should you take the money, but also what for? And usual, we should say which technology is the most efficient for protecting climate. And natural answer is renewables and energy efficiency and use efficiency to improve both of them. I would like to say that, in my opinion, its situation is different. If we take into account that in some countries, growing economies like China, India, but also in North Dakota, coal seems to be more and more useful. And it's a growing proportion of using of coal in electricity production, more than 50% today all over the world. So probably the most efficient should be carbon capture and storage technology, which is not very well known yet. We didn't check it yet. But my question is, if you are ready for financing such a technology, carbon capture and storage, because if we want to finish with success our fight for climate protection, we must think about 20, 30 years perspective. And International Energy Agency in Paris is saying quite clearly, coal consumption will be growing, not declining. So my question is about this one, the most important from my point of view, technology. And second, could you give a full example of using pension funds and public-private partnership in such an idea of financing for clean energy technology deployment and investment? One good, full example. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Buzek. Okay. I think we have a volunteer with an answer.
No, thank you very much. My name is Mark Knight. I'm just briefly. I manage the clean tech program at HarborVest. We are through the history of our team, we've invested about $1 billion into the space in the venture and private equity growth capital areas, and have been in the space since about 2002. So I will be brave enough to answer your first question about carbon capture, and maybe not your second one. I think in terms of carbon capture right now, if you look at the technologies, there really are not financeable technologies out there right now, unless they are associated with an enhanced oil recovery, as you mentioned. But really, there are not commercialized technologies out there right now. However, there are technologies in development now that look very promising in that regard. So in terms of being immediately able to address carbon through carbon capture, no. Now, there's many other technologies that are reducing, the carbon output. But in terms of directly addressing carbon capture in a market-driven, non-subsidized economic way, no. But stay optimistic.
Mr. Ahmad?
I fear this will also not satisfy you. Let me try and answer both questions. So I think the first one is, I agree 100% with Mark. If you're trying to do the type of thing that I'm trying to do, to develop a fund that is appealing to pension funds. So it's a commercial enterprise. You have to back and think about backing from the outset commercial technologies that are scaling, but technologies that are commercial. And I think one thing that maybe I omitted in my comments earlier is that there's an important role for governments to play here. So there's a set of risks associated with these nascent technologies, which only governments are able to take. And in fact, you see this in carbon capture and storage. You know, one of the places that this is being developed is in Norway, but it's not being done by the private sector. It's being done by the state oil company in Norway. And this, you know, if they're successful and it can scale, then it'll come. In the meantime, there are other technologies that are more friendly to the environment that are improving. So I think that's one answer, is that there is really a role for government in nascent technologies. Second thing is, irrespective of your views and on coal and the importance of coal. I mean, we had this brief conversation on your country, which I know a little bit and have very fond memories of. Coal is obviously very important there. Irrespective of the fact that coal is very important, it's a resource there, it's a resource in North Dakota. It makes obvious sense to be efficient, right? So use less coal if you can. So even if you're a coal-based economy, you know, energy efficiency represents an opportunity which is obvious. Water efficiency represents an opportunity which is obvious. So I think that is, I think, still a focus even in those countries. I think this answer to your second question won't satisfy you, but I mean, I hope that in a short period of time, once you know, we're up and running and able to talk more openly about what we're doing, maybe then there'll be more satisfactory answer to some, you know, complete project that is being financed, including with pension funds. But we're still in process.
Yes, Roger Wagner with P80 Group Foundation. I was going to say that I think one of the mitigation elements that is important to recognize when the coal is considered as an inevitable fuel for at least the time being is the coal bed methane degasifying technologies, and of that there are very well proven commercial examples.
And I'd like to respond a couple of different ways to the question. First, I agree with Mr. Wagner. There are a number of technologies surrounding the coal industry. Some very exciting ones we talked about the other night, about actually putting microbes down into coal mines and generating methane gas, which you could then burn at much less emission rates than burning coal. A lot of exciting things happening there, but we are focused on existing technologies. And there are a number of existing technologies that can make coal burn cleaner and more efficiently. The sequestration makes a lot of sense because if you can never figure it out, it's a wonderful thing. And there are some projects in Canada now that are taking the carbon emissions from coal plants and using them for other purposes with the carbon dioxide that's created. But let me just give you, the first part of your question was some examples. Let me give you a couple of examples that were talked about today. One, Mildred Cayer from SEAF, the Small Enterprise Assistance Fund, was describing in Peru, where the Peruvian government pension fund has invested in the SEAF private equity fund in Peru, which in turn invested in a private sector company, which in turn built several run-of-the-river hydroelectric projects in Peru. A few years after that, a Brazilian company came in and bought that company because they wanted to go from 6 or 9 projects to 100, and paid a very good price for the company that had been developed. So although Mildred cannot give the exact details, the pension fund was very happy with their investment. It was a very quick return on their investment. So that's a specific example which you asked for. The other one we talked about a minute ago was LED lights. I mean, it's almost a no-brainer. You know, if you go in and do this, you're going to cut 80% of the electric bill. The private investor groups gets half of that. It's going to be a very good return. We talked about 2 technologies today that are here in the room. One is a company called Energy Extreme, which Devin is the CEO of over here at this table. This technology, you can hook this system to a diesel generator which the U.S. military has already done and tested, it can cut the fuel consumption of the diesel generator by 69%. Now, that pays for itself very quickly, no matter how much outrageous price he charges for this product. But, I mean, can you imagine if every diesel generator in the world was hooked to this system and reduced the fuel consumption and emissions by 69%? That is a huge thing, and it's already proven. I mean, it's you know, available today. The problem is getting it deployed. You have to have financial resources, both the company level and at the in-country level, to get that deployed. So, I mean, that is an example. Another one that was talked about today is SN Tech Electric Motors, which Dr. Hart, behind you there, found in Korea amongst the 55 so companies he studied. This electric motor can improve the efficiency of blowing air in buildings like this by how much, Dr. Hart?
And air constitutes 73% of production of electricity on a daily basis globally. If you operate at 92% as opposed to 26%, then you essentially reduced overall carbon emissions by about 30% globally.
I'm a little slow in math, but
well,
you know, if you
I
can...
agree with you. Of course, it's quite obvious such an answer, because our usual natural answer is energy efficiency and end-use efficiency plus renewables. But I am also looking for the more complicated answer for the future, because it's not enough energy efficiency together with renewables today, knowing about the coal consumption in the future. That's a problem, but I understand it's too risky financing such a technology. I can understand that.
Well, no, we applaud exactly what you're talking about. I think what he's saying, though, could you repeat, Dr. Hart, if every electric motor in the world was shifted to this new technology, what would be the...
Let me give a brief introduction. The issue is not just carbon emission. That's a simplistic way of looking at this. Our society, if you look at the last 3,000 years, the socio-economic complexity of our societies at any stage has been directly related to the number of energy units per capita that can be provided by our various systems. Unfortunately, the system that we've been using since 1700 is a carbon-emitting system, which then drives another set of complexities relative to agriculture, food, etc., etc. What we must do is come up with a means to increase the amount of energy per capita in order to continue the growth of the complexity of our technologically based system. But we must do it with reduced carbon emission from these systems that are providing energy. The easiest approach for us right now, therefore, is energy efficiency. And there are technologies available, such as the energy efficient motors, which reduce average consumption on electrical consumption in the average home by approximately 50% in the average home. And water movement in agriculture and the home by the same amount. Will that solve the problem? No, but it will go a long direction. The difficulty with carbon capture, and I love carbon capture, I like coal. I come from an area which had lots of coal. The difficulty is that with all present technology, best technology available, that gives you a barrel equivalent of oil of $198 a barrel. And that is non-sustainable in our market unless we reduce energy per capita per economic complexity of the system. That's the problem.
Dr. Jones.
Thank you. And I mean, I want to also make sure we don't just focus on the coal question. But firstly, President Buzek, thank you for hosting the Prince of Wales when we came over to Brussels a few years ago as well with the P80 Group. But I just wanted to say, I mean, the partnership that we're talking about here, we're looking at both the short term and the long term. And in the short term, it's deployable technology, it's investable technology, it's those things which we sort of coined today, the low risk, high return investments that the pension funds need. And there are several technologies out there that we can take to scale. It's a question of aggregation. It's a question of putting them together and getting the right people together to demonstrate what's possible so we can start to create the market. We hope that in parallel with that, we can have conversations with Club de Madrid about the other enabling factors that will create the market that allows you to do everything we possibly need. For carbon capture and storage, we need a strong price on carbon. The European Emissions Trading Scheme has gone some way to that, but it needs to be much higher than it is currently to be able to get a deployment of carbon capture and storage. We need governments to be investing in that sort of technology. We need the big energy companies to be investing in that sort of technology to demonstrate what's possible, to de-risk it, to take it forward. That will take some years, and we can't wait for it to happen. So in the meantime, we have to make sure the pension funds know what climate change is and know how to have that conversation, have had the experience of making some clean energy investments so that when carbon capture and storage technology and a whole host of other technologies are ready, it's part of what they do. They have the asset classes that allow them to make this investment. They have the risk understanding of what this sector does. We've been able to develop a carbon price that supports more deployment of those technologies as well as the other technologies like carbon capture and storage. So it's not to the exclusion of any particular technology. All of them are needed. We just need to be able to create the market and that long-term market. So in the short term, let's get some projects that we can get off the ground now. And in the long term, let's make sure we have the right enabling framework for things like carbon capture and storage.
Prime Minister Campbell.
Well, thank you. That was actually probably a more sophisticated way of saying what I was going to say. So let me just say something on the basis of as a public policymaker. I can understand the Prince of Wales being mesmerized by the kinds of monies available in pension funds. But pension funds are not venture capital funds. So the real challenge is to figure out where pension funds can go to consistent with their mandate, but also what particular advantages pension funds have. Because pension funds can be patient capital. And I think what we need to see is a model that allows pension funds to be used very effectively, both in terms of their own return and the kinds of support they can give to the development of technological change that will serve the social and environmental purpose that we're trying to accomplish. And two things strike me, the story about the LED lights in North Little Rock and also President Lagos's comment about the price of copper. I think the underlying thing we need is a way of calculating what the benefit is from certain technologies. And incidentally, I would recommend that everyone here get a copy of Michael Grunwald's book, The New Deal, which is about the Recovery Act here in the United States. And although it is one of the most poorly reported on pieces of public policy, it is a measure that is larger than anything that was done in the New Deal under President Roosevelt. And it brought with it enormously important investments in green technologies. And there may be technologies that have been supported by that government investment that could be scaled. The question is, when you scale technologies, how do you get a return on investment? Because where will the money come from? And to have that return on investment, you have to be able to calculate what it is that you've saved. With LED lights, you can do with your light bill. But if there's a price on carbon, that will transform our ability to measure the benefit of these technologies and provide sources of revenue for the kind of patient capital that pension funds have, that can see through these changes. Because one of the things that we see now when we look at hedge funds and all the other kinds of investments on Wall Street, for some reason or other, there's been a change over the last 20 years. And the way companies measure their success is this quarterly return on the bottom line that's often very impatient and often results in policies that are not the best. Pension funds have an enormously valuable source of capital for achieving this goal, and we have to find out the best way to use it. And that means putting a price on carbon.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Hurd?
There's one other approach that we're seeing some interesting work done in, which is to convert CO2 directly to energy. examples like Joule Technologies, Joule, which has raised maybe 50 million in venture capital, 10 million from Ross Nano, I believe, or Lanza Tech from New Zealand, which has two big projects going on with Bao Steel and another leading steel company in China. So we do have the transformative leap technologies that are being worked on that are very uneven, sometimes fall flat on their face, and sometimes change the world. So it's good to watch them.
President Hallerden?
Yeah, very interesting discussion. I was thinking further about the situation of how the clean energy technology could be used, and then I thought that, of course, these pension funds are a very good question, but going further, so there were some representatives of the Little Rock city also, and so I know that how interested the different cities and municipalities have been the possibility to use clean energy. So how much you have been working with public sector, especially with different cities, first so that cities themselves could integrate the system, for instance, concerning the waste issue or the traffic, or then further to the households, so that private families could use it, but not, I mean, it's not always necessarily possible if the cities have not allowed the system where to use it. So how much you have worked with the cities and then the households? And then my very, very shy question. You were all very handsome, but it would be nice to have one lady there too. Thank you.
President Quiroga.
Thank you. Good evening. Jorge Quiroga from Bolivia. We're in politics, so we never have questions. We always have all the answers. I want to thank all our hosts in Arkansas. Pierre, Norman, you look a lot better on TV than live, but good enough. I'm the only Bolivian here that went to Texas A&M, so I have the Heisman Trophy for all you Arkansas Razorbacks. Oh, I know, that was painful. Let me switch topics a little bit in the following way. If I was a pension fund, a private equity fund, and I was thinking about clean, renewable energy and investments, I would think along the following lines. First, this is an admirable country that invents a lot of different things. We all admire Mr. Zuckerberg, Mr. Page, Google, Facebooks, and everything else. But you do have a gentleman by the name of George Mitchell who had the best investment ever. He invested $6 million over 12 years, and he developed shale gas, which has transformed a lot of things so far and will transform even more. We can light up this room in the United States with shale gas for $1. If we were in Germany, Japan, or China, it would cost $5. That is an incredible technological breakthrough that is not quite appreciated. And the reason I know that is because my country produces gas. We used to try to sell some to you guys. I talked to Mr. Lagos. We're going to build a plant on the coast. Didn't pan out. He decided he needed energy independence. He built LNG gas import plants in Chile. And he was smart enough to tie the formula not to oil, but to Henry Hub price. And next year, Chile will have very cheap gas delivered to it if BG delivers on the contract. But what happens here, like Frank Sinatra said, what happens in New York matters everywhere, however the song went. But the same thing is true with shale gas. I'm giving you a small little example. I can give you lots of other ones that dramatically affect and impact how the world will evolve in the future. What is the point here? You have manufacturing has been chasing cheap labor for a long time. Manufacturing will start chasing cheap energy for a good long time. If I was a pension fund and I got a 20-year horizon, I'd start looking for places with cheap energy. It'll start North America, and then it will start going to where the shale gas technology made in the U.S. is exported, whether it's Poland, Australia, Argentina, or wherever else it happens to be. So if I was in Arkansas and I was looking at renewable energy, reduced emissions, I would start noticing things like the U.S. is the only country over the last 5 years that has reduced emissions. Not because you started turning off the lights, because you have shale gas replacing coal in the electricity generation. And if you propagate that throughout the world, that'd be a huge, incredible advantage. And you not only have that, you have the most important political human being in the planet that happens to live here and has a beautiful library here. And I just run through it this afternoon, the bridge through the 21st century. I think the 21st century needs clean energy, wind, solar, hydroelectric, but the bridge is shale gas. And you have the man who built the bridge, and you have the bridge in terms of energy. And I would find somewhere, somehow, the way in Little Rock, Arkansas, to develop the propagation of shale gas technology to reduce emissions with cheaper energy, to create more jobs in manufacturing, with the most widely known brain in the planet, which is the man that has the library here. So you have a lot of things working for you. I would try to use them. And you will not win the Heisman, but at least you can win the Heisman in terms of energy and politics propagation. Thank you.
Mr. President, let me let you know you have no bigger supporter on this shale issue. We've also been working on coal bed methane, where you can drill down into coal seams around the world and bring up natural gas for a long time. And so we're very big supporters of this. We're actually looking at probably 9 different technologies that can enhance the existing shale gas recovery and also deal with stranded gas to compress it and move it around better. So we're all for you on the shale gas for sure.
Yes, Prime Minister Kok.
Could I make a few short remarks? First of all, I want to tell you that on behalf of the Club of Madrid, we are extremely grateful for having this opportunity and bringing these people together, the pension funds, organization, P80, the energy sector, and thinking about the future. And a lot has to be done, of course, at a very short notice, because we are exploiting the planet in a way which is literally unsustainable. And we all know that, and nothing happens, or it doesn't happen at necessary speed. So listening to all of you, I have a question to the pension funds representatives here. You are sitting on a lot of money, you are investing the money, representing your participants, of course, and they are very critical now on your revenues, because in my country, for example, in the Netherlands, people claim to have one of the best pension systems in the world, but nevertheless, they are losing money and they are less certain than they were in the past about their level of payment they had previously. So people, participants in the pension funds are extremely critical. What are now, and then again I come to my main question to the pension funds, what are now, I'm not entering into details on the technological pros and cons of that type of energy, and what are the main hurdles? Why only to a limited extent you are able to invest in clean technology and sustainable development projects? I ask this question against the background of my common sense that you have to earn money anyhow. I mean, you're not here in order to serve mankind. It would be nice, but you're not there to serve mankind. You have to serve the interests of your participants. What are the main hurdles? And next to that question is the question, what could we do at short notice or at longer notice? What could we do, former prime ministers and presidents of all over the world, in order to help you bringing this hurdle to be down? Thank you.
Okay, I think you may have already had this conversation, but Eugene, do you want to take a go at answering that? Mark wants to take this one? Okay.
Yes, I'll answer. I guess I'll answer this question from the perspective, I guess, our history. We've been managing pension fund sovereign wealth money in the clean tech space since 1993, and have placed about $1 billion of that money into the space. So I'll give you the perspective of that. I think the main hurdles that we have from a pension fund investment standpoint are it's a new sector. We're going to talk about some risks because investment is opportunity and risks. And the pension funds, as someone else has mentioned, are very risk averse. And so let's go through the risk list. The risk, number one, it's a new sector. You know, mining, energy, automobiles, that's been around a long time. But clean tech is relatively new. Second risk, there haven't been very many managers who have a long experience in the space. And pension funds, again, being more risk averse, like to see managers. Third risk, the experience of pension funds who have placed some money into the space or are looking into the space from the outside over the past 10 years has been bad, right? I mean, the return, we started into a clean tech bubble starting, 2005, 6. We went up into the bubble, it's crashed. And now these pension funds are looking at what they've done, and they've had a very bad experience. And so those are the hurdles that, I think we have in terms of getting pension fund money into the space. Now, on the other side, what can be done? And, some other speakers have spoken to this, but I think what we need to do is put investment vehicles or investment structures in place that helps mitigate those risks that we talked about. Because investment funds or sovereign wealth funds, they don't spend a lot of time sitting around thinking, oh, I'm going to create a new investment vehicle that I need, typically. They're looking for the financial industry or other people to bring that to them. And so I think that's a great role for this group, is to think about what makes the most sense to help mitigate those risks. One other comment I want to make just on a perception of where the clean tech space is right now. Just a little bit of perspective. We have now gone through our second clean tech bubble. There was one starting in 1992 that crashed, and that was driven mainly around utility deregulation in the U.S. We then now went into a second one, which we've now crashed through. And what we need to make sure now is that we don't go through a third one. But as an investor in the space, I think we are fairly optimistic because there's some new things this time. A lot of the companies that started at the beginning of the most recent bubble and have come through are now companies that are good companies. They can deliver great financial returns. They can reduce carbon emissions. They can justify themselves because on the basis of pure economics and pure market forces, they don't need subsidies. They don't need a price on carbon. And we're seeing, and it's very different than it was 5 years ago. And so again, getting this group motivated around some of those opportunities is important. And I think one last point I want to make is around water. We've talked about the clean tech space is very broad, and we can't underestimate the impact that water has globally and the water shortages that are going to come. But on the plus side, all the great new water technologies that are sort of have now come through over the past 5 years, which I think we also need to focus on.
I'd like to add to what Marcus said, and perhaps to answer your excellent questions, Prime Minister Wim Kok. I think my good friend Sam from Asian Development Bank said it very well when he said the battle for climate is going to be won or lost in Asia. So that is the battleground. And if we want to mobilize our pension funds and sovereign wealth funds to invest in Asia, especially developing Asia, there are many, many things that they find difficult to swallow. Political risk, currency risk. But from our point of view, one of the most important things is that there is not an infrastructure to put this money to work. So the fund managers are not there, the developers are not there, The governments which are giving out these projects are not as well aware. The regulatory environment is not good. It's the whole thing. We don't have enough lawyers, not enough accountants, blah, blah, blah. Okay? It's not the. We have lawyers who do the wrong kind of law. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, Roger. Yeah, so so the one of the solutions that we're looking for is it's not one problem. It's actually a large basket of problems, and so we need to try and attack these problems simultaneously. And this is what we found out, and we tried to solve over a period of 3 years. It's taken a long time. I think Reyes and his team at IFC have found one very good solution. ADB is coming up with a very good solution. Mark is also coming up with a private sector solution. But there are ways to do it, and we need to tackle this problem not in one way, but in many different ways. Some will fail. I'm sure many will fail, in fact, but we've got to find a few that are successful and use that as a pilot. What can you do to help? I think Club de Madrid is very, very important. We need you badly. When we go into a developing country, in the emerging countries of Asia or Latin America, or we have some friends from Africa as well, we find that it is best if we can get some of the large money managers from that country who know their locality very well to be a part of that investment team. So you don't have to put money into, for example, IFC's vehicle, but if you can co-invest, for example, if the pension fund in Mozambique or if the pension fund in Peru can co-invest with our vehicles, that gives the large pension funds from the US and from Europe a great deal of assurance. So what we would like Club de Madrid members to do is to take an active interest in where the bottlenecks are within your own countries or with the companies or people that you work with, and try to unravel some of the knots that is stopping your own country investing in your own country. So we would like to work together, and I think Club de Madrid and the pension funds and sovereign wealth funds getting together is actually a fantastic event. Thank you.
I would like to add one thing to this discussion, and that is because it's easy to confuse. We are not talking about the pension funds or sovereign wealth funds or insurance companies investing and inventing new technologies where there's a lot of risk. What we're talking about is existing technologies that are proven, that are been deployed many times, but could be deployed thousands of times, not deployed in 3 countries, but in 80 countries. And that's what we're focused on. And so it's a different animal than, the typical quote unquote clean tech investing. We're talking about deploying technologies that can address resource issues such as energy shortage, water shortage, clean air, and food. And it's a very clear mandate that we're working on.
Olga, I think you had a question.
I'll make this short, but I just wanted to say that I think the most valuable function of this very esteemed group of leaders is to take this issue of climate change and elevate it again even further than it is already. And what I've heard personally in the days that I've spent with the very scientifically educated people here is to see that this issue is even more serious than I personally had realized. So I think that some of these recent studies that say, for example, 4 degrees of warming and so on could be accepted by this group as relevant science and simply forwarded with your cards to decision makers who are currently in power and able to elevate this issue in specific terms, in regulation, and in standards, in government procurement, in standard setting, and so on.
Thanks, Roger. We'd like to go back and kind of wrap this up with an answer to our esteemed member, the president of Finland. From Michael Smith, the question was, are we focusing on cities? Are we listening to cities? I believe that was the question, and the learning experiences that cities present. So could you explain what ICLEI is doing in this area and how it could lead to large scale deployment? Oh, they're bringing one to you.
The role of cities is frankly the place where you have mayors and council members facing the reality of needing a balanced budget, needing to be able to put things into practice, and then looking for real ways to deploy. So cities are already doing what member nations are trying to do on the ground, and I think the opportunity for large investment, being able to like drive forward clean technology progress, happens at the city level. We have some 1,000 cities across the globe on every continent in 84 countries that are looking for ways to get investment and bring model projects to scale. And cities offer the opportunity to do that. Folks like Mayor Hayes are looking for ways to be able to take energy efficiency and renewable technologies and bring it to scale, make it work for their local citizens, and frankly, be able to have return on investment for those large investors who are looking for ways to be able to drive the new economy and make the return. So thanks for the opportunity. Frankly, folks in the Nordic countries are doing a fantastic job at the city level, and we look for their leadership. Mayor Hayes.
Thank you, Mike, and certainly Monica. One of the things that's difficult, and in large measure, we've got a people problem as much as we've got a lack of capital problem. And the people problem is changing the way that we look at and deal with our norms as to how we function on a day-to-day basis. And let me give you a bit of an example, and I'm going to switch over just a second or two to our utility. We're the largest public power city in Arkansas, and we have used our own ability to finance improvements in terms of smart meters, in terms of smart grid, in terms of trying to reduce our consumption of energy by installing. We took 3 years, and we did it 8 years ago, changed out all of our traffic control signals in the city. And the logic is inescapable. We use roughly a third of the energy we used to use. We also don't have to change out the lights every year or two. We do it every 9 or 10 years. And the savings, not only in terms of maintenance, but in terms of capital expenditures for energy is significant. Now, how do we take that and that energy savings, and we're doing our street lights now in the same way. The savings isn't quite as significant. It's about 40 to 50% of what we've done. But how do we take those savings and utilize them in terms of some other investor, some private equity fund or some pension fund to come in and use their capital to do that? The vehicles in Arkansas, and perhaps even on a broader basis, don't allow the prioritization of securing those income streams. And the income streams in the negative, in the sense of the amount of savings that you have over what you've historically been paying to acquire that energy for whether it be home use or whether it be a municipal use. So the new vehicles that we have to look at are not only vehicles that allow the securitization of that kind of a reduction in cost, but also at the same time to look at how we're going to change the behavior patterns of many of our citizens, at least in our cities. And the other thing is that cities have not waited. They have not decided to wait on the state in some respects or the federal government. I know that Greg Nichols, the former mayor of Seattle, started 10 years ago a Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement. And I was one of the 40 or 50th mayors that have signed it. And now we have well over 1,000 mayors in the United States that are committed to going back to their own jurisdictions and not waiting on anybody else other than taking steps in their own communities with their own city limits to do a variety of things. And we've enjoyed in North Little Rock the ability to utilize our utility in terms of our electric distribution system to look out for clean ways to acquire energy and partnerships that we can use. And we bring our citizens along almost every step of the way, because it takes that kind of a buy-in before we're really going to make significant strides in both the utilization of financial methods and also the changing of behavior patterns of those that at least reside in our various cities.
Well, there's Alec, you want to?
I just wanted to follow up just on the cities one, because I think this specific question was, are there examples of where this has already happened at the city level? And just to give a reason why we want to work with the Club de Madrid is to try and make sure that we have lots of these sorts of opportunities out there. So the P80 Group...
Well, unfortunately, we have to conclude these proceedings, but any of you who would like to or not otherwise tied up in Club Madrid meeting tomorrow, welcome to come to the Chamber of Commerce building to participate in our implementation discussions. And what that is we're assuming the Little Rock Accord, which is the agreement between the Club de Madrid and the P80 Group, will be approved, and I think it's supposed to be signed early afternoon tomorrow. But in the morning, all of the folks that have been participating in all these proceedings will be making specific commitments to what they can do to assure the implementation of the accord. And so I welcome all of you or any of you who would like to continue the discussion to show up at the chamber at 9 in the morning. And thanks to Jay Chesser and his crew there, they've been wonderful hosts to these proceedings. Maria Elena, we'd like to give you a special thank you, and your team, the Club de Madrid team, has done such wonderful work to organize all of this and the rest of the proceedings over the next couple of days. So let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you. So this is not the end of anything. It's really the beginning of a great partnership between the P80 Group Foundation and the Club de Madrid. So thank all of you for being here. Pierre, thank you for being our host tonight, and look forward to continuing tomorrow our discussions. Thank you.